The twin suns of Zephyrian Prime burned red over the slave market, painting the sky with smoke and dust. Thousands of voices shouted in the air, bidders, guards, and the cries of the hopeless. In the center of it all, a young alien girl named Lyra fell to her knees on the cold metal floor. Her thin blue skin glistened with sweat and fear. Her silver eyes were full of tears, but her voice was strong. "Please," she begged, her voice shaking but loud enough for all to hear. "Sell me to the fattest, ugliest human you can find." The crowd went silent for a moment. Then laughter exploded around her. The aliens watching, reptiles, insects, and beasts from 100 worlds, laughed like she had told a joke. "Humans?" one of the traders hissed. "You want a human? They are monsters." "She's gone mad," another shouted. Lyra did not move. She kept her head down, her hands pressed together as if praying. In the cage behind her, her little sister Nira lay weak and pale. She was too young, too hungry. Her ribs showed through her soft skin. She had not eaten for days. Lyra turned her head just enough to see her sister through the bars. "Don't worry," she whispered softly. "I will save you." Nira's lips moved, barely making a sound. "Don't do it, Lyra." But Lyra had already made her choice. She knew what humans were. Everyone did. The stories said humans were cruel, greedy, and heartless. They bought alien slaves only to use them in wars or experiments. But she had also heard another story, a rumor that humans sometimes paid more than anyone else. Enough to buy her sister's life. Enough to buy food. Enough to save her. The auctioneer, a fat insectoid with green eyes, buzzed his wings. "You heard her!" he shouted. "This one wants to be sold to a human. Any humans in the crowd?" Most of the buyers laughed again, but then the laughter stopped. Heavy boots echoed across the metal floor. The crowd turned to see a tall shadow moving through the smoke. The figure was massive, wrapped in a long black coat. A metal arm gleamed in the red light. His face was half covered by scars, and one eye glowed faint blue. A human. The traders stepped back. Even the guards lowered their weapons. Everyone in the market knew that humans were rare on Zephyrian Prime and dangerous. The man stopped in front of Lyra. His deep voice cut through the noise. "How much for the girl?" The auctioneer's wings trembled. "Captain Rourke, you want this one?" He nodded once. "She asked for a human. I'm the only one here." Lyra dared to lift her eyes. The man was enormous, his face hard like stone. His body looked built for war, but there was something strange about his eyes. Cold, yes, but not empty. They looked tired, almost sad. "She's weak," the auctioneer said quickly. "Her sister's nearly dead." "You don't want—" "Name your price," the man said again, his voice low and final. No one argued with him. The deal was made. When he threw the credits down, the whole market fell silent. Lyra didn't know if it was fear or respect. All she knew was that her body was shaking. As the guards unchained her wrists, she turned one last time toward the cage. Nira reached her small hand through the bars. "Don't go." Lyra pressed her fingers to her sister's hand. "I will come back for you. I promise." Tears rolled down her cheeks as the guards pulled her away. She didn't even feel the pain in her wrists anymore. She only felt the weight of her promise. Captain Rourke turned and began walking toward his ship. Lyra followed in silence. The crowd watched them go, whispering like wind through metal. "That human's insane," one trader hissed. "She won't last a day," another said. "She's already dead," someone muttered. But as Lyra walked behind the human, she noticed something strange. He wasn't dragging her. He wasn't shouting. He simply walked, slow and steady, as if lost in thought. They reached the edge of the docks where a giant black warship waited, covered in scars and rust. The name painted on its side read the Iron Nomad. Lyra stopped and stared. The ship looked like a beast asleep in the shadows. "Get on," Rourke said without looking back. She hesitated. Will you feed my sister?" she asked quietly. Rourke paused at the ramp. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his voice came rough and strange. "You'll feed more than one mouth today." She didn't understand what he meant. But there was something in his tone, something that made her heart pound. Fear, hope, confusion, all mixed together. As the ramp closed behind them, the market disappeared into smoke. Lyra looked out the small window, seeing her sister's cage fade into the distance. She whispered again, "I will come back, Nira, I promise," but deep down, a voice in her heart whispered back, What if you never can? The engines roared, and the iron nomad rose into the red sky, carrying Lyra away from the only world she had ever known. And somewhere inside that dark ship her fate, and maybe the fate of many others, had already begun. Lyra woke up to the sound of humming metal and the low rumble of engines. The air smelled strange, cold, sharp, and clean. She opened her eyes slowly, expecting to see chains or a dark cell. Instead, she saw a small room made of steel. The walls glowed faintly with blue lights and the floor vibrated beneath her feet. She sat up fast, heart pounding. Her wrists were free. No shackles, no guards, just silence. She touched her arm where the bruises had been. They were gone. A soft cloth covered her instead of rags. There was even a tray of food beside her bed. Bread, fruit, and water. For a long time she didn't move. It felt like a trick. In the slave markets, kindness always came before pain. The door slid open with a hiss. Captain Rourke stood there, tall and quiet, the blue light shining on his scarred face. His metal arm gleamed faintly. "You're awake," he said in a low voice. Lyra jumped back, pressing her back to the wall. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing you can't give," he said calmly. "Eat, you look like a ghost." She stared at him. Why are you feeding me? Humans don't help slaves." He didn't answer right away. He looked around the small room, his gaze distant. "You're not a slave here," he finally said. "You're crew," Lyra frowned. "Crew? I don't even know what that means." He turned to leave. "You'll learn." The door closed behind him, leaving her alone again. She stared at the food. Her stomach twisted painfully, begging her to eat. But her mind screamed not to trust him. After a while, hunger won. She took one small bite. It tasted real, sweet and soft. Tears filled her eyes as she ate. It had been so long since she had real food. When she finished, she looked around the room again. There was a small window showing stars, endless stars moving past like silver dust. She was in space, far from her world, far from Nira. She whispered to herself, "I'll find a way back." Later, when she stepped outside, she found herself in a narrow hallway filled with machines and pipes. The air vibrated with the ship's heartbeat. She walked slowly, barefoot, trying not to make noise. The Iron Nomad was nothing like the shining alien ships she had seen before. This one was rough, scratched, patched with metal plates of many colors. But it felt alive, like it had survived 1,000 battles. As she turned a corner, she froze. There were others on the ship, aliens like her. A tall creature with 4 arms carried tools. A small gray being with big eyes pushed a crate. They all looked tired but not afraid. They looked at her for a second, then went back to work. No one shouted, no one hit her. One of them, an older alien with silver horns, noticed her confusion. He said quietly, "You're the new one." "Don't worry. He doesn't hurt anyone." Lyra blinked. "The human?" The alien nodded. "Captain Rourke. He saved most of us. Doesn't talk much, but he's fair." She didn't know what to say. Saved? Humans didn't save anyone. That night she couldn't sleep. The ship made strange noises, groans and beeps like whispers in the dark. She decided to explore. She followed the faint light of the corridor until she reached a large door with strange markings. It slid open when she touched it. Inside was a command room. The walls were covered in glowing screens and holograms. Maps of planets and galaxies floated in the air. But what froze her heart was one hologram in the center, a picture of her home world, Illustra, burning. Fire covered the forests. The oceans glowed red. Millions of small dots, ships, moved across the surface. She gasped. "No," a voice came from behind her. "Don't touch that," she turned. Rourke was standing in the doorway, his shadow tall against the light. "You knew?" she cried. "You knew what happened to my planet?" He stepped closer. His expression didn't change, but his eyes looked darker. "I didn't destroy your world, Lyra." "Then who did?" He hesitated. For the first time his voice softened. "The Syndicate. They own half the galaxy. They trade lives for credits. They sold your people. They sold your sister." Lyra's hands trembled. "You worked for them, didn't you?" He didn't deny it. Once, a long time ago, she backed away, fear returning to her face. "So you bought me to finish what they started?" Rourke looked at her with tired eyes. "No, I bought you because I couldn't watch another child die." For a moment, the room was silent except for the hum of the engines. She wanted to scream, to hit him, to believe him, but she couldn't. His words didn't fit the story she knew. Humans didn't feel guilt. They didn't save anyone, but his eyes, they told another story. He turned toward the door. Rest, we reach the border tomorrow. After that, you'll decide what to do. When he left, Lyra stood alone in the glowing light of her burning planet. Her heart felt heavy, but somewhere deep inside, a spark of something new began to grow. Not trust, not yet, but a question. Could a human monster also have a soul? The next morning, the Iron Nomad drifted through the darkness of space. Its engines purred like a sleeping beast. Inside, Lyra sat by the window of her small cabin, staring at the stars. They looked so peaceful, cold fires shining in the black sky. Yet her heart burned with questions she couldn't stop asking. Who was Captain Rourke really? Why did he buy her? And why did he have a hologram of her destroyed planet? The door slid open with a soft hiss. Rourke stepped in, holding 2 steaming metal cups. Drink, he said. It's synth tea. Helps you stay awake. She didn't move. You said the Syndicate destroyed my planet. Why, what did we ever do to them? He sat on a chair across from her, his massive frame creaking against the metal. The Syndicate doesn't need reasons, he said. They take what they want. Your world was rich in silver plasma, a rare fuel. They sold your people to the mines. Lyra's fingers clenched. You said they sold my sister. Her voice cracked. Do you know where she is? He nodded slowly. She's alive. I tracked her last month. She's on a prison ship called the Dreadhold, orbiting the Syndicate's main station. Her breath caught in her throat. Alive? For now, he said quietly. She stood up, her voice trembling with both fear and hope. Then we go there. We save her. Rourke's gaze hardened. It's not that simple. The Dreadhold is guarded by thousands. Even I can't just storm in and take someone. Then why tell me? She shouted. Why give me hope if you won't help? He didn't answer right away. He stared down at his metal hand, fingers curling slowly. Because you deserve the truth, he said at last. And because I need you. Lyra blinked. Need me? For what? He leaned forward, his scarred face half lit by the ship's glow. I used to work for the Syndicate. I built their machines, their weapons. I helped them enslave whole species. Then one day they sold my own crew, humans, to pay off a debt. His jaw tightened. That's when I turned against them. But I can't take them down alone. You think I can help you? Lyra asked softly. I'm just one girl, Rourke shook his head. You're not just one girl. You know their language, their systems. You lived under their rule. You can help me get inside their codes, their networks. If we can reach their main control ship, we can destroy the Dreadhold and free the prisoners, including your sister. Lyra stared at him, her heart pounding. His words felt like a dream, a dangerous, impossible dream. Why risk your life for this? She asked. Why do you care what happens to my people? He looked at her for a long time, his expression unreadable. Because I'm tired of being the villain, he said simply. Those words hit her like a pulse of light in the dark. Later that day, Rourke showed her the ship's core, a large room filled with glowing wires and energy cells. It was warm, alive, almost breathing. This is the heart of the Iron Nomad, he said. If you're staying, you'll learn to keep it running. He handed her a small tablet. This connects to the ship's data logs. You'll use it to track the Syndicate's transmissions. She frowned, touching the screen. Why trust me with this? Because if you wanted to kill me, he said dryly, you already would have tried. Lyra looked at him, surprised. You're not afraid of me. He gave a small half-smile. Fears for people with something left to lose. There was sadness in his tone, something that made her chest ache. For the first time, she wondered if the monster she feared was also a man who had lost too much. Hours passed. The Iron Nomad sailed silently through the dark. Lyra worked beside the glowing panels, scanning the Syndicate's data lines. She learned quickly, and Rourke watched her from across the room, impressed by how fast she adapted. Then suddenly the screen flashed red. An encrypted message appeared. Transmission, Dreadhold security alert. Target, Captain Jax Rourke, wanted for treason. Lyra gasped. They're hunting you. He didn't flinch. They've been hunting me for years. But this means... She looked up at him, panic in her eyes. They know where we are. Rourke's voice turned sharp. Brace the ship. They're coming. Before she could ask who, alarms began to wail. The ship shook violently. Through the window, flashes of light filled the void. Syndicate interceptors closing in fast. Lyra gripped the console. What do we do? Rourke ran to the controls, his metal hand slamming down switches. We fight, he said grimly. You wanted to find your sister? Then hold on tight. The Iron Nomad's guns came alive, roaring fire into the black sky. The battle had begun, and as the stars burned around them, Lyra realized something terrifying. Her only hope of saving her sister now lay in the hands of the very human she once feared the most. The Iron Nomad limped through deep space, smoke leaking from its side after the Syndicate attack. The stars outside looked calm again, but inside, alarms still blinked red like angry eyes. The crew worked fast to repair the damage, patching holes, fixing wires, and cleaning blood from the floor. Lyra stood at the viewing deck, her reflection trembling on the glass. She had seen death before, but never this close. One wrong shot and they would all be gone. Captain Rourke stepped beside her. His metal arm was scratched and burned, his face stained with grease and blood. You did good back there, he said, voice low and steady. Lyra turned to him. I was just pressing buttons and praying, she said softly. That's how most battles start, he said with a tired grin. She didn't smile back. If I'm going to fight the Syndicate, she said, I don't want to just press buttons. I want to know how to survive. He looked at her for a moment, really looked, and saw not the scared girl he bought from the market, but someone who had fire in her eyes. He nodded once. Then I'll teach you. The next morning, training began. Rourke led her to the ship's empty cargo bay. The walls were lined with weapons, old human rifles, plasma blades, and armor that looked too heavy for her small frame. He tossed her a blaster. Rule 1, he said, don't point it unless you mean it. She caught it clumsily, her hands shaking. I've never shot anything before. Then it's time to learn. He stood behind her, adjusting her grip, guiding her aim. His metal hand was cold against her wrist. Breathe, he said. Don't fight the weapon. Feel it. Lyra took a slow breath and squeezed the trigger. The blaster cracked with light. The recoil threw her off balance, but she hit the target, barely. Rourke nodded. Not bad for your first shot? She wiped sweat from her brow, determined. I can do better. By the end of the day, her arms ached, her clothes were soaked, and her hands were covered in burns from plasma heat. But she didn't stop. Every time she missed, she tried again. Rourke watched in silence. He saw something in her he hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. Days turned into weeks. Lyra learned how to move through darkness, how to repair ship engines, how to fly small fighters. Rourke trained her with a soldier's patience but a mentor's care. Why are you helping me this much? She asked once as they sat in the control room after training. He stared at the stars. Because someone once helped me the same way, before I lost them. She wanted to ask more, but his voice went quiet like a door closing. One evening, while Lyra practiced alone, the ship suddenly went dark. The lights flickered red. The alarm blared again. She ran to the command deck. Rourke was already there, standing before the radar. What's happening? She asked. He didn't answer at first. Then he said, They found us again. Through the window, small red dots appeared. Syndicate drones, dozens of them flying fast. Rourke grabbed his rifle and handed her another. You remember what I taught you? Lyra nodded, heart pounding. Don't point unless I mean it. Good, now mean it. The drones crashed into the hull. The ship shook violently. The crew scattered, taking cover. Sparks flew across the deck. Lyra crouched beside Rourke, firing back through the window. One drone exploded into flame. Another hit the side of the ship, tearing off a panel. You're improving, Rourke shouted over the chaos. I'm aiming for the ones trying to kill me, she yelled back. A sudden blast knocked Rourke off his feet. His rifle slid across the floor. A drone aimed directly at him, charging its weapon. Without thinking, Lyra dove in front of him, fired, and destroyed it in one shot. The explosion threw her backward. Smoke filled the air. When the noise settled, Rourke crawled over to her. You're insane, he muttered, half angry, half amazed. She coughed, smiling weakly. You said to mean it. He stared at her for a long time, then laughed, a real, deep laugh that sounded almost human again. After the attack, when the ship was safe, he found her sitting near the engines, staring at her shaking hands. You saved my life, he said quietly. She looked up at him. You saved mine first. They sat in silence, listening to the hum of the ship. Then he said, We're getting close to Syndicate space. You'll need to be ready. Once we cross their border, there's no turning back. Lyra met his gaze. I'm ready? I'll do anything to save my sister. He nodded slowly. Then tomorrow we begin phase 2. You're not just learning to fight now, you're learning to lead. Her eyes widened. Lead? Someone has to take over if I don't make it, he said simply. The words hit her like a blade to the chest. She wanted to argue, but his expression told her he had already accepted his fate. That night, as she lay in her bunk, she couldn't sleep. The ship hummed softly around her. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of the human captain anymore. She was afraid of losing him, and far away across the stars, the Syndicate prepared a trap. One that would test everything she had learned and everything she had become. The Iron Nomad drifted through a quiet stretch of space. Too quiet. Even the stars looked dim, like they were holding their breath. Lyra sat in the control room watching the scanners flicker. Every few seconds the radar blinked, but nothing appeared. No ships, no signals, just silence. Captain Rourke stood beside her, his jaw tight. Something's wrong, he muttered. Lyra frowned. We're in Syndicate space, right? Shouldn't there be patrols or drones? Exactly, he said. This calm means one thing, someone's waiting. He turned to the crew. Keep shields up. No one fires unless I say. The air felt heavy, almost electric. Lyra could feel her heartbeat echoing in her ears. The training, the battles, the courage she had built. All of it trembled beneath a quiet fear. And then, the stars began to move. Dozens of shapes emerged from the dark. Not drones, not small ships, a fleet. Syndicate destroyers surrounded them like wolves circling prey. Their black hulls gleamed with red lights, and in the center of them, a massive command ship appeared, an ugly monster of metal and fire. Lyra whispered, "The Dreadhold." Rourke's eyes narrowed. No, that's Krell's ship. The name felt like poison in the air. Lord Krell, the Syndicate warlord. The one who had burned Illustra. The one who had taken her sister. A cold voice came over the comms. Captain Jax Rourke. You've been a thorn in my side for too long. Rourke's face hardened. Krell. The alien's voice oozed through the speakers, smooth, deep, and cruel. You think you can steal from me? Free my slaves? Hide my property? Lyra flinched at that word. Property. Rourke's voice stayed calm. You took children and called it trade. I'm just collecting what belongs to freedom. Krell chuckled. How noble. But I have something you want. The screen flickered and a hologram appeared. Nira. Thin, trembling, trapped in a metal cage. Her big eyes were full of fear. Lyra, she whispered weakly. Don't come. The signal cut. Lyra's heart cracked. No, bring her back. What did you do to her? Krell's laughter filled the bridge. Return the girl you stole from my markets, and perhaps I will let the child live. Rourke clenched his metal fist. You'll kill her either way. Maybe, Krell hissed, but you'll die watching her scream. Then the transmission ended. The fleet around them began to move closer. Rourke barked orders. Power the guns. Prepare the jump drive. Lyra, stay at the console. But she didn't move. Her hands were frozen, shaking. He has her, she whispered. He'll kill her if we fight. Lyra, listen to me, Rourke said, gripping her shoulders. It's a trap. If we surrender, we both die. Tears filled her eyes. But if we fight, she dies. He didn't answer. There was no good choice. Only pain. Hours passed like slow seconds as the Iron Nomad dodged missiles and plasma fire. The ship shook, alarms blaring. One of the engines blew out. Shields down to 40%, shouted the crew. Rourke slammed his fist on the console. Hold together, Nomad. Through the chaos, Lyra stared at the hologram of her sister, frozen in her mind. Every explosion, every flash of light reminded her that Nira was still out there, scared and waiting. Her thoughts twisted, faster and louder. Then suddenly something inside her snapped. She ran from the bridge. Lyra, Rourke shouted. Where are you going? But she didn't stop. She sprinted down the corridor, heart pounding like thunder. She had already made her choice. Minutes later, Rourke found her in the hangar, standing beside one of the small escape shuttles. Don't do this, he said. His voice wasn't angry, it was broken. Lyra turned to him. Her eyes were wet but steady. He wants me, not you. If I go, maybe he'll let her live. You'll die, he said. I'd rather die than let my sister suffer because of me. Rourke took a step closer. You don't understand the Syndicate. They don't bargain, they destroy, she shook her head. Then I'll destroy them first. He looked at her like he wanted to stop her, but he didn't move. Maybe he knew he couldn't. Finally, he said quietly, "If you're going, take this." He handed her a small device no bigger than her hand. A beacon. Press it once you're on Krell's ship. I'll find you. Lyra looked at it, then at him. You promise? He met her gaze. I don't make promises I can't keep. She hesitated, then nodded. Thank you. For everything. He gave a small, rough smile. Don't thank me yet. The shuttle door closed. Engines roared. Rourke watched as the small craft shot into the dark, disappearing toward the Syndicate fleet. He whispered to himself, You foolish, brave girl. As Lyra's shuttle approached Krell's ship, a transmission came through. Welcome home, little Illustrian. Krell's voice purred. Your human won't save you now. Lyra stared out the window, fear clawing at her chest, but beneath it burned something stronger. Anger, she whispered. I'm not yours anymore. And as the docking claws of the Syndicate ship closed around her shuttle, Lyra knew she was walking straight into hell. But this time, she was not the same frightened girl who begged to be sold. This time, she was ready to fight. The cell was cold and silent, the air thick with the stench of metal and fear. Lyra sat on the floor, her wrists bound with glowing chains that burned when she moved. The walls of her prison pulsed faintly with Syndicate symbols, each one humming with cruel precision. Through a narrow window of reinforced glass, she could see the endless black of space. Somewhere out there, beyond those stars, was her sister, and somewhere, maybe too far to reach, was Captain Rourke. The door opened with a hiss. 2 reptilian guards dragged her to her feet and pushed her into a wide hall lined with glowing red lights. At the end stood Lord Krell. His tall, scaled body glistened like polished armor. His eyes, bright and golden, watched her with amusement. Well, the little Illustrian finally came home, he purred. How touching. Lyra kept her head high even as her body trembled. Where's my sister? Krell smiled, showing sharp teeth. Alive, for now. You should be grateful. Most of your kind died in the mines, she glared at him. You destroyed our world, he tilted his head. Destroyed? No, we improved it. Profit is the only law that matters in this galaxy. You and your sister were simply valuable. I'm not for sale anymore, she said quietly. Krell laughed, the sound echoing like thunder. Everyone is for sale, even your human captain. Lyra's heart clenched. He's not like you, oh? Krell smirked. He used to serve me. He killed thousands for Syndicate credits. You really think he's your hero? Lyra froze. Her mind flashed with Rourke's haunted eyes, his scars, his silence. She had known there was darkness in his past, but hearing it from Krell's mouth felt like poison. Krell leaned closer. I'll make you a deal, little one. Join me and I'll give your sister back. Fight for me and I'll spare your planet's survivors. Lyra's voice broke into a whisper. And if I refuse? He smiled coldly. Then you'll die watching your sister starve again. He turned away, signaling the guards. Take her to the execution chamber. The human will come for her, he always does. And when he does, we'll burn them both. Across the void, the Iron Nomad roared to life. Rourke stood on the bridge, his face lit by the glow of targeting screens. His crew waited for his command. The beacon signal from Lyra's device blinked on the radar, faint but alive. Set course for Krell's ship, he said. The silver-horned mechanic shook his head. Captain, it's suicide. Their fleet's twice our size. Rourke's eyes hardened. I've been dying a long time. Today I choose how. He slammed a fist on the console. Prepare all cannons. We're bringing her home. The Iron Nomad jumped into hyperspace, its engines screaming like a beast unleashed. Inside the Syndicate fortress, alarms began to wail. Lyra was dragged into a huge chamber filled with bright lights and metal walls. She was forced onto a platform surrounded by energy coils. Krell's voice echoed through the speakers. Bring in her sister. Let the girl watch. 2 guards appeared carrying Nira, thin, weak, but still alive. Her eyes met Lyra's and tears fell down her cheeks. Lyra. Lyra screamed and fought against the chains, but the energy held her tight. Krell's voice purred again. Touching. Let's begin. The floor shook. Then a second later, a deep explosion ripped through the walls. The lights flickered, a voice thundered through the intercom, raw, powerful, human. This is Captain Rourke. You have something of mine. Lyra's heart nearly stopped. He actually came, Krell snarled, his claws curling. Fire on that ship! Burn it to ash. Outside, the Iron Nomad dove through waves of Syndicate fire, engines blazing blue. Drones swarmed like insects, but Rourke's guns cut them down in storms of plasma. "Keep the shield steady," he barked. The ship trembled, but it kept moving forward, straight into the enemy fleet. Inside, Lyra's chains suddenly flickered. She realized the blasts were hitting the fortress itself. Rourke wasn't just fighting. He was breaking in. With a scream, she pulled against the cuffs until her wrists bled. The energy flickered again and broke. She was free. The door exploded open in a shower of sparks. Rourke stood there, smoke curling around him, rifle in hand. Lyra stared, stunned. "You came." He smirked through the dirt and blood. "I told you not to thank me too soon." Together, they fought their way through the corridors. Lyra grabbed a fallen guard's blaster and covered him, shooting with perfect aim. They moved like one, back to back through fire and chaos. When they reached Nira's cell, Lyra ran to her and tore the locks open. "I've got you," she whispered. Nira clung to her, sobbing. "I knew you'd come." Rourke turned, reloading his weapon. "We're not safe yet. Krell's not dead. He was right." The walls shook again, and from the smoke Krell appeared, tall and furious, claws dripping with blood. "You think you can take what's mine, human?" he roared. Rourke raised his rifle. "She was never yours." They clashed in a storm of fire and steel. Krell struck with his claws. Rourke blocked with his metal arm. Sparks flew. Lyra aimed, firing at Krell's chest. The blast knocked him back, straight into the reactor chamber. "Lyra!" Rourke shouted. "Now!" She aimed at the reactor's core and fired. The explosion tore through the fortress, lighting the sky like a second sun. Rourke pushed Lyra and Nira toward the exit pod. "Go, get out now!" "What about you?" Lyra cried. He smiled faintly. "I'll be right behind you." But as the doors sealed, she saw him turn back, limping toward the fire, fighting to hold the collapsing walls. "Rourke!" She screamed, but the ship was already falling apart. The pod launched, spinning into the dark as the fortress exploded behind them. Through the small window, Lyra saw the fire swallow Krell's empire. Her tears fell like stars. "He came for us," she whispered. "He really came." The escape pod drifted through the endless dark, lit only by the burning wreckage of the Syndicate fortress behind it. Lyra held her sister close, feeling Nira's heartbeat against her chest. The child's breathing was shallow but steady. She was alive. Against all odds, she was alive. Through the small window, the stars flickered like silent witnesses to everything they had lost. Fire still bloomed in the distance, the last remains of Krell's empire falling apart piece by piece. But Rourke was gone. Lyra sat motionless, her hands trembling on the controls. "He said he'd be right behind us," she whispered, her voice breaking. Nira looked up weakly. "He'll come, Lyra. He always comes." The pod drifted for hours, silent except for the hum of failing engines. Lyra tried to stay strong, but her thoughts kept returning to the last thing she saw, Rourke turning back into the flames. The image burned in her mind like a wound that wouldn't close. Finally, the ship's signal light began to blink. A faint voice came through the static. "Nomad." "This is Rourke." Lyra froze. "Captain?" "Captain, it's me," she shouted into the radio. "Where are you?" More static. Then his voice again, weak but alive. "Got caught in the blast. Engines failing. Coordinates. 217 by Delta 9. Lyra's heart leapt. "Hold on, I'm coming." She slammed the controls and forced the pod toward the signal. The engines screamed in protest, but she didn't care. She had made a promise to save her sister. But now she had another promise to keep. She was going to save him too. Hours later, she found him. The wreck of the Iron Nomad floated in a field of debris, its once proud hull torn open. Sparks flickered like dying stars along its side. Lyra docked the pod and crawled inside through a broken airlock. The corridors were dark, filled with smoke and silence. She called out his name again and again. "Rourke! Where are you?" A faint metallic sound answered, one slow, painful breath. She followed the sound to the bridge. There he was, half buried under a fallen beam, his face pale and covered in soot. His metal arm sparked weakly. Lyra rushed to him, tears already falling. No, stay with me." He looked up at her with one tired eye and managed a faint grin. "Told you. I'd be right behind you." She tried to lift the beam, but it wouldn't move. "Hold on, I'll get you out." He shook his head slowly. "No time, reactor's gone. You need to take your sister and go." "I'm not leaving you," she cried. He reached out with his metal hand and touched her cheek gently. You already did what I couldn't. You saved someone. She gripped his hand tight. You saved us. You gave us freedom. He gave a soft laugh that turned into a cough. Freedom always has a price, kid. Tears blurred her vision. You can't die, not now. Not after everything. Rourke's voice grew softer. Listen to me. There's a shipyard on the edge of Orion space. Take the Nomad's data core, it's in the bridge console. There's enough there to rebuild, to start something new. Lyra shook her head. No, you'll come with us. We'll fix you. He looked at her one last time, his eyes strangely peaceful. You already did. And then his hand fell still. When the Iron Nomad's final systems failed, Lyra carried the data core to the pod, her heart hollow and heavy. Nira was waiting, eyes wide and full of tears. Is he? Lyra didn't answer. She just held her sister close and whispered, He's free now. The pod drifted away as the Iron Nomad broke apart behind them, scattering across the stars like ashes on the wind. Weeks later, on a quiet green moon far from Syndicate space, two figures stood under a rising sun. Lyra and Nira had built a small camp near a river, surrounded by silver trees. Birds sang in the distance, real birds, not drones. Life had returned to them slowly, one sunrise at a time. Every night, Lyra would sit beside the campfire and speak softly to the stars. She told stories of her world, her sister, and the man who saved them both, the ugly human the galaxy had feared, the man who gave up his life so that others could live. One night, as she looked up at the constellations, she smiled through her tears. You were wrong about yourself, Rourke, she whispered. You weren't a monster. You were the last good thing left in this cruel universe. Nira curled beside her, holding a small piece of metal shaped like a star, the only thing that survived from Rourke's arm. What will we do now? Nira asked sleepily. Lyra looked up at the sky, her voice firm. We'll build what he dreamed of, a place where no one is owned and no one begs to be sold. A home for the lost. The stars glowed brighter, as if listening, and far above, among the wreckage of the Iron Nomad, a single beacon light flickered once, then faded into the endless dark. The legend of Captain Jax Rourke, the fattest, ugliest human who defied the Syndicate, would spread across galaxies for centuries, and every story would end the same way. He came not to conquer. He came to save, and in saving others he found what no war could ever destroy, his humanity.